On today's episode of the podcast, we're lucky to have Jayne Hansen, a community health educator for Salt Lake County. We'll discuss the wellness wheel and what intuitive eating means.
Welcome to the Living Life Our Way podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping you live intentionally. Our goal is to take back control of our lives by living life on our terms. Join us as we work towards living life our way.
Welcome back. I'm Jeff, and today we have a special guest on, one of my good friends, Jayne Hansen.
Hello, Jeff. I'm stoked to be here. It's going to be really fun.
Yeah, super excited to have you on. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, thanks. So I'm a health educator with Salt Lake County Health Department. I work in their worksite wellness division. So I am one of the health educators there that creates wellness programs for employees to essentially adopt healthy behaviors and just better their lives. A part of the wellness program that we provide for county employees is encouraging employees to get their annual screenings done. So we want them to have a rapport with their doctor, their physician, just to know what their health concerns are, and ultimately engaging in healthy behaviors through the programs that we run, as well as going to see their physician regularly. They receive points, and those points add up to a annual cash rebate. So it's an incentive for them, a monetary incentive for them to engage in being healthy, and in turn, they're becoming more healthy. So that's something that we have done, but it's been cool as the program has run that employees adopt these behaviors not for the money. They're adopting them because they ultimately feel better, and that's the goal, right? The money's always an incentive, but it's not the ultimate reward. The reward is that they're becoming more healthy. So it's definitely a cool thing to be a part of, and just to see over time, they're becoming better versions of themselves through adopting healthy behaviors.
Yeah, that's something we've talked a lot about on our podcast, that anytime you can incentivize good behavior, as long as the incentive doesn't become the reason you're doing it. We've talked a little bit about, I've done Duolingo for learning Spanish.
Right. Yes.
And I think we've talked about this before,
yes.
that eventually the point system and kind of leveling up became the motivation for. We've got cute
Are
Drew.
we going to get a visitor? Can you say hi to the people? Say hi.
Duh.
Yep.
Stuff.
All right. You say be happy and be healthy.
Woo.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And this isn't really what we're talking about, but I think it's something important is for me, that's why I want to adopt healthy behaviors, is so that my son can see that it's a part of life, right? It's a way of life.
For sure.
It's not just, I don't want him to think that mom is always on the new fad diet or, trying to fit into clothes that don't fit. I just want to be happy and healthy and show him that that's the best part of life,
Yeah, of course.
Anyway, that's not what we're talking about, but that's why I'm so passionate about health.
No, and I think that's one of our biggest things is if you figure out your why, really what you want more of out of life, that helps you define behaviors that really move you towards those things. Yeah. Where if you're just saying I want it for, we call them the 4 L's, likes, lust, luxury, and leisure.
Yeah.
If you're just doing it for those things, it ends up not being overly fulfilling.
Or sustainable.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
So it's long-term health. What does that look like for you? And I think that's really, like you said, going back to the Duolingo, those incentives may get you started at first, but what are your intentions with them, right? Are you just checking off the boxes, or are you are you invested in your health, or are you invested in your learning, whatever it might be? So yeah, it always comes back to going, to your why. So I think that's cool that you brought that up.
Yeah, we talked a little while ago about our life lenses. That's what we call them. And you introduced me to the idea of the wellness wheel. So what is the wellness wheel?
The wellness wheel is rad. So I'm going to pull up my notes because sometimes I get a little, like I forget what all the, I'm like, I know there's 8, but I'm missing one. So anyway, yeah, the wellness wheel is essentially the 8 pillars of health. And in school, when I was at the University of Utah, we talked a lot about how these 8 pillars affect each other. So you've got your intellectual wellness, your emotional or your mental wellness, physical wellness, occupational, financial, environmental, spiritual, social. And I really do think that as we strive for balance in these areas of health, that's where we feel the most well or the most healthy. And it's interesting how they all affect one another, right? So if your occupational health isn't where you want it to be, you can see areas of your social health start to decline, right? So like if your occupation isn't allowing you to take time off, or you don't feel like you can leave your work at work and come home and be at home, it's affecting your social wellness and even your mental wellness at that point. So they do affect one another. And sure, you're not going to have, there are going to be more sometimes in your life where you are more invested in your occupational wellness because you're laying down the foundation for the rest of your future, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you are focusing on your retirement, whatever it might be. But it is important to strive for balance in these areas because that's really what makes us feel the overall healthy but happy, right?
Yeah.
And when you feel a disconnect in your spiritual wellness, it takes a toll on your physical health. So
Totally.
Yeah, they're interconnected, and that's the beauty of it, is that when you're working on one thing, you almost see like an eye opening towards another area or another pillar of health. And so, yeah, the wellness wheel, it strives for balance. And I'm not completely balanced, but I sure as heck try to be balanced.
If there's anyone who is completely balanced, I'd really like to meet that person.
I know. Yeah, they do not exist. They are gone, or they're 100 and they've just figured things out. But yeah, so this idea of wellness is the wellness wheel is just that they affect each other, right? Just like a wheel on a car, they move together to push you to the destination that you want to be. And yeah, wellness is awesome. It's definitely something that I'm always striving for, and it changes in different times of your life, right?
Yeah.
So just giving yourself grace in that, knowing that, yeah, I'm in the mode where I'm a mom. I'm making babies, and my body is not my body right now. And so how can I be well and kind to myself in this stage of my life? Because, in 10 years from now, the things I do now are going to set me up for the next 10 years, and then the next 10 years. And then, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's being kind to yourself along the journey, but recognizing that you're in charge of your wellness.
Yeah. So in our life lenses, we talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
The synergies of making progress in one area should lead to progress in several other areas.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's identifying those activities that maybe if you get too focused on just your occupation, you can eliminate things that maybe aren't helping you make progress in other areas. But if you're mindful about it, you can make progress in your occupation, but also in your physical health, your social health, especially, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you brought up this idea of mindfulness, because what a great way for us to really hone in on, well, what areas of my wellness do I need to improve on, right? because you open up your phone and you scroll on Instagram or Facebook or the news, and it's telling you the newest fad or, ways to get healthy. But is that really what you need?
Yeah.
Is that really what you need to become the best version of yourself? And really, you're the only one that can ultimately decide that. But I hope that listeners are focusing on long-term sustainable health, and going to resources that are obviously going to put them in that direction. But anyway,
yeah,
super cool.
No, a huge component of wellness is definitely that reflection and then planning. So looking back, saying what's working, what's not, and then moving forward with what am I trying to implement here? So.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So at Living Life Our Way, our goal is to help others develop a strategy for living life in a way that puts them in a position for the best success. What books, people, or other resources have influenced you the most in your life?
Awesome. I love this question, Jeff, because I feel like I'm a forever student, and especially when it comes to my health and the wellness industry. But working in the wellness industry for as long as I have, you've kind of seen this shift, right? Mm-hmm. So over the last 5-7 years, people have adopted this idea of overall wellness. I feel like it's not so black and white. People are adopting more of this mindfulness technique or health at every size philosophy, and these are more sustainable long-term behavior changes that we can adopt to ultimately, put us where we want to be. But to answer your question, as far as what resources or people or books that have inspired me, definitely my professors at the University of Utah have helped me be more critical thinking as far as health goes, right? So just because it's worked for one person doesn't necessarily mean that it's the standard for everyone. So you need to get your information from a research-based, accredited source, right? Whether that's a university or whether that's someone who has gone through the proper networks to get certifications to make them accredited. And again, I remember you were actually on the podcast with Troy, and you guys talked about this idea of like social media, and it's a vortex. That's a podcast for another day. But also there's a lot of good things on social media, and you can find influencers or accredited people who have gone to school, who are advocating for a healthier, more sustainable approach to life. And those are the people that you should be influenced by. I follow a few that definitely motivate me and create or support this idea that I have for overall wellness. But I get to choose, and that's the cool thing about health, is what is important to me, and then I find information that is accredited and real that's going to propel me in that direction. Books, I love to read books, or listen to books, whatever you have time for. But a few of my favorites that I love are Health at Every Size. This is written by a gal who has her PhD, but it's this HAZE approach to health, this philosophy of that you can be healthy at whatever size you are. You don't need to fit into a mold. You can be healthy because there's so many things and factors that attribute to our health, right? Or contribute to our health, whether that be genetics, or whether that be, a traumatic experience that's happened to us. There's a lot of different factors. And so just recognizing that you can be healthy, whatever size you are. And the size of your body doesn't always dictate how healthy you are.
Totally.
So, you can kind of, if you're interested in that, definitely read it or look up some opportunities to just strengthen that muscle when it comes to being healthy at every size. I also love the book blue zones. And this is written by a National Geographic, like, world traveler. And he's seen the world and noticed that the people who are the happiest or the healthiest, the people that live the longer, have these 9 areas of health that they focus on. And it really is this idea of the wellness wheel. So that's really cool. If you're interested in just a fun read that really gets you deeper into why you want to live healthy, that's a great one. I also love the book More Than a Body, and this is written by twins. They're PhDs. They have their PhD, and they talk about how your body is not just an ornament. It's an instrument, right? So you should be using your body to do things that you love. It's not just to be looked at. And
Totally.
And I love that, especially as a female in today's society. I mean, I'm sure you feel this way too. Where, you know,
Yeah,
you're a man, I'm a woman. But anyway, it's just generally you feel, you know, there's a more materialistic pressure for women. And this is just a good reminder that you don't have to look a certain way or be a certain way. You just have to love who you are and embrace who you are and do things that make you happy. So I loved that. And then I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but a book that quite literally has changed my life, which is The Intuitive Eating. It's a revolutionary framework for eating. And it, again, is written by registered dietitians and PhDs, women who have worked in the field for a really long time. So they have that accredited information. But it's incredible. It's just this idea that you are in charge of like giving your body the power back to eat freely. And no foods are good or bad, but giving this, like, letting gentle nutrition and hunger ultimately be your guide. And yeah, it's awesome. So.
Yeah. I think that's so let's just go into intuitive eating. I actually have a kind of a follow-up question to all those books.
Yes.
It seems like wellness is moving in large measure towards what can be used to make money. And that's not a criticism, because I obviously own my own business. I know making money is important, but things like diets, it's just easier to sell someone on a diet that's really fixed and more concrete than just saying intuitive eating, for example.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit a couple weeks ago about yoga, where yoga as a practice anciently was these 8 kind of hierarchical steps that you work your way up, and the movement part of yoga was only the 3rd step in that. There's things about being a good person in your community that is totally lost to the eons. But things like that, where the physical movement is just so much easier to sell than kind of this nebulous idea of be kind to others.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on the commercialization of wellness?
It's a billion-dollar industry, and
I actually think it's a $1 trillion industry.
Yeah, they are absolutely aware of what they're doing, and I think that's where what it comes down to is absolutely. I have purchased, green drinks to help my gut health. I've absolutely purchased yoga equipment, and whatever it might be. We all have contributed in some way to the health industry. I just think you get to decide.
Intuitive eating.
Yeah.
A book, they're selling that.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. I think it just comes down to, again, making like a informed decision on, rather than just, buying the latest diet trend book or, protein bar or whatever it might be, that you think about, like I feel like this is going to be sustainable for me. This is going to be something that I I'm going to adopt this behavior in my life, and, etc. But it is hard. It's hard to make that decision. But I think they definitely do know what they're doing. Like, I think about like the face creams and the oils to help, anti-aging. Like, what is that? We should be able to age. Like, that is literally a part of the human experience. So just being aware of the things that you're purchasing and contributing to, because it's not going away. Like,
Totally.
We're not gonna like picket fence and march around.
Well, nor should it.
No, they do a lot of good, but you get to decide what good they do for you. And I think that's the ultimate goal.
And I'm going to push back a little bit on something you said about studies and accreditation.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's a immediate pass for people.
Right.
Because you can find 2 registered dietitians with PhDs who say completely opposite things.
Yeah, you can.
And I think that a lot of times wellness is so complicated.
And vast, yeah.
And vast that, and it's not one system in our body. It's not just like a cardiologist where all he does is focus on blood vessels.
Right.
It's just global. And I think that it's so individual as well that finding studies is an important thing. And you want to make sure that you're not just getting the quacks that are trying to push their anti-aging face cream.
Right.
So accreditation is important, but I think that also it just comes down to what ends up working.
And what works for you.
Yeah.
Because exactly, Jeff, that's exactly how I feel. But like, I'd much prefer getting my information from someone who has done research versus someone who is just like this rando on the internet, So yeah, absolutely. But like, what works for you? Because what works for Jenny down the block doesn't work for Jayne, So it's like, you just have to know what works and go with it. But if it works sustainably, like if you can do it for, 20, 30 years, then stick with it.
Yeah, you got to apply some of your own scientific process. Make a hypothesis.
Absolutely.
If it doesn't work, move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Just because keto doesn't work for you doesn't mean
it doesn't work for some people.
Yeah.
Or
that you're a bad person.
Yes. And the other thing I want to mention about this too is that like long-term health conditions, like chronic health conditions, like dieting, some restrictive diets are absolutely necessary for you to function properly, for your body, your organs, for it all to work the way it's supposed to. So like, I know that intuitive eating may not work for you, but it works for me.
Yeah.
And I respect and honor whatever works for you, right? But that's the thing, is it's not a diet at that point. It is this adoptive behavior that they have made to ultimately create longevity for their life, right? Yeah. So it's like they've had to restrict from a certain food group or food groups because that's literally the only way that their body will function.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of grit and just because they care about their health.
Yeah.
They want to live a long life.
No question. All right, so let's talk about intuitive eating.
Yes.
Maybe somewhat controversial. I don't know, but
I mean, for sure, some people feel it is, but I don't know if they've given it an honest effort. But I am biased. So, because like I said to you earlier, health at every size really did change my life.
Yeah.
I was a very competitive athlete growing up and very restrictive on the things that I did and didn't eat. And I feel like it maybe created some disordered eating tendencies for me. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that. I feel like a lot of people can relate to my feelings. So that's just kind of, a blanket statement. But for me, intuitive eating has literally changed the way I think and feel about food, because it's this approach to eating that focuses on the body's response to cues of hunger and satisfaction. Yeah. So when you're hungry, eat. when you're satisfied, stop eating. And it sounds so simple, but it truly is hard, because our culture has taught us, oh, you need to finish the food on your plate.
Yeah.
Or, oh, it's not 12 o'clock. You can't eat yet. You can't eat lunch. Or it's past 7. So you're cut off from anything that you want to eat. So for me, it's really it's given me the power back of like being more intuitive, but mindful with my body. And like if I'm hungry, I'm going to eat something, and when I'm satisfied, I'm not going to continue to eat, because then it puts you past the point of satisfaction and then you're uncomfortable.
Yes.
So it's really this beautiful idea of just looking at food as fuel. And so we can go into a little bit about the framework for intuitive eating. It has 10 principles, and I've got them written here. It says, reject the diet mentality, honor your hunger, make peace with food, challenge the food police, discover the satisfaction factor, feel your fullness, cope with your emotions with kindness, respect your body, movement, and feel the difference. And the last one, which I think is the most important, is honoring your health through gentle nutrition. And when I talk to people, and when I health coach people through work, and I bring up this idea of intuitive eating, I just talked with a gentleman actually who I've been health coaching, and he was talking about how he felt like if he gave himself free range to eat whatever he wanted, that he wouldn't eat anything that was actually good for him.
Yeah.
And I said, well, maybe for the first little bit, but then your body, like if you're really being mindful, if you're really adopting intuitive eating, your body will actually say, I don't want that. This is what I want. I want a nutrient dense meal with different vegetables and protein and fruit and, carbs, whatever it might be. That's what my body wants. That's what's going to give me the energy and the fuel I need to be able to do what I love. And I think that's the thing is, at first you may feel that way, right? You may feel like, oh, I just want to eat cookies and cake and chips and crackers and all these things. And yeah, like you might, but how cool is it that you're paying attention to what your body wants?
Yeah.
And not just saying, no, I can't have that. That's like I'm restricting myself from these things. But I don't know if you've ever tried a diet, Jeff, but for me, if I'm restrictive on certain things, all I can think about is the food that I'm restricting myself from. So it's just this idea of balance and letting, gentle nutrition, hunger, fullness be your guide. And I love that movement is also a part of intuitive eating. It's this idea where you like actually feel the difference when you're eating foods that fuel you. You can feel a difference. Like when you're training for a half marathon, you have to eat food that's going to fuel you for your half marathon or whatever you're training for. So, I just love this idea where we're not labeling food as good or bad. We're labeling food as food. Like food doesn't have feelings. You can't label it as good food or bad food. You can label it as nutrient dense food and food that is, empty in nutritious needs. And you can be the judge of what that is. We all pretty much know.
Yeah.
But it's important to, eat foods that are going to give you that long-lasting energy, that are going to make you feel your best. And foods that make me feel my best are probably similar to the foods that make you feel your best, but I don't know, So it's like a diet that's restrictive, and I don't feel like I need to like break down good diets versus bad diets. Like you can be the judge on what works for you. But if it's sustainable, right? Yeah. That's always what I come back to, is when I ask myself, is this sustainable? Is this something that I'm going to do for the next 20 years? You know, I'm almost 30. So in 20 years, I'm going to be 50. And I want to make sure that the things that I'm doing now are going to put me where I want to be. And anyway, what I mean by that, as far as intuitive eating goes, is diets can be, have you heard of the yo-yo dieting cycle where, you know, you get on a diet and then you get off the diet and then you get on another diet and then you get off the diet, right? You lose 30 pounds, but then you gain 40 back or whatever it might be. That takes a toll on your physical health.
Well, and like, emotional.
Yes. It takes a toll on everything, right?
Throughout
financially.
The wellness wheel.
Right. Yeah. Like, whoop, who cares? Like, you're just trying to fit into a mold of looking a certain way. And, again, you go back to health at every size. You go back to whatever it might be, just your why, right? Why do you want to lose weight? Why do you want to be healthy? And you can only answer that question.
Yeah.
But adopt behaviors that are going to put you there in the long run, right? Do you want to play with your grandchildren? Then adopt behaviors that are going to let you do that now.
Yeah.
And if you want to travel the world with your sweetheart or your friends or whatever it might be, then do things now so that when you're retired, you can do it. And that's really what it comes back to, is this idea of wellness. And for me, a big part of that is eating and eating all different types of food. I love ice cream and I eat it all the time. And I'm not going to restrict myself because life is too short.
Yeah. And
you should enjoy the foods that you eat. I love to garden and I love to eat my fresh zucchini and squash and peas and tomatoes. And those are the things, right? It's a balance of all different things. And so don't restrict yourself because someone has told you to do that. I mean, again, chronic diseases are one thing.
Yeah.
But if you're just looking for happiness with food, just maybe try an experiment of not restricting yourself and adopt this intuitive eating approach and see if you like it.
Yeah. I think that there's, I just saw a new thing that came out that's like a glucose monitor and it does real time.
Those are rad, especially if you have diabetes.
Yeah. But this one was marketed for people without diabetes, and it was just to track how certain foods impact your blood sugar. And I might eat pineapple and it has no effect on me. You might eat pineapple and it's a huge spike.
A spike, right.
And not necessarily that there's anything wrong with a huge spike, but it's good to know those kinds of things. Yeah. And I think that really what it comes back to is just that wellness wheel of why do you want what you're doing? If you are wanting it for the 4 L's, that lust or likes, it might not be worth it in the long run. In 20 years, you're going to look older regardless of who you are.
Absolutely.
And that's okay, but you can't, it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And I think that finding things like I want to have more energy to play with my kids. We had cute Drew on.
Yeah.
If that's one of your things that you really want more of, what foods get you more of that energy?
Yeah.
And I think you do really, if you are really mindful and really intentional about why you're eating what you're eating, eventually you can balance out. You won't just keep going to the chips and cookies and candy because you'll feel like garbage all the time. And no one wants to feel that way.
Right.
Your body's amazing, and it'll tell you what it needs.
And that's just it, Jeff. Your body is amazing and it will tell you what it needs, but you have to allow it to do that.
Yeah.
That's where this connection between our mind and our body, they have to become friends again.
Yeah.
They have to become friends again, because I feel like we're constantly like they're fighting each other, and just let them be friends, you know?
And it's so much easier to have someone tell you what to eat.
Yes. We want that. And again, there are some cases where that's important, right?
Yeah.
If you are dealing with a chronic illness or, you're trying to figure out what's going on with your body. A doctor or a registered dietitian is going to be your best bet. And they're going to give you kind of a framework of foods that you should focus on eating. But hardly ever, unless it's really, really, really important for them, they feel like it's important for them and for you, they'll give you that plan.
Yeah.
And at that point, that's a way of life that you need to adopt for longevity of your health and of your life. But that's not really the focus of intuitive eating, right? That's for people like you and me who just are generally healthy. And I just think it's important too that, we take the time to figure out what's important to us, that we find our why, and then those behaviors can support our why, and then we can be successful. And then in 30, 40 years from now, we can still live healthy, happy lives because we're putting in the work now for a sustainable behavior change.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. And I've really enjoyed having you on with me today. I'm sure this won't be the last time you come on the podcast.
It's fun. I'm sorry you're not going to be able to get me to shut up. I love health and wellness. It's a huge part of who I am.
Yeah, well, we need more people like that and people that are willing to think critically. I think that that's something that social media takes away a little bit is it's so fast and so easy that people have stopped thinking and we just act according to what we see our favorite influencers do.
It's true. Yeah. And you don't have to do that. Like if it doesn't sit well with you and it's not working for you, then try a more sustainable approach.
Yeah. Go against the grain. There's no problem with that.
There's no problem with that. And sometimes I feel like you find yourself in that way because you decide, I don't want to run. I don't want to do 45 minutes of cardio. I want to do this, or I want to dance, or whatever it might be. Just like you get to decide what works for you. And that's the beauty of health. It's so individual, but you can be healthy and you can be happy. And I think that's where they intertwine. So good stuff.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you so much, Jeff. It's been fun.
We'll look forward to having you the next time. We were lucky to have Jayne on today's episode. I'll put a link in the description to the podcast run by the Salt Lake County Health Department, as well as the YouTube channel where they do meditations. If you'd like to support the podcast, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you listen. It really helps us out. We look forward to seeing you in the next one.